My sister-in-law unexpectedly invited me to be a bridesmaid at her upcoming wedding. Initially, I was surprised by the request since we hadn't been particularly close. Despite my initial hesitation, I accepted, thinking it would be a chance to strengthen our bond, especially since she expressed a desire to get closer. In the months that followed, I became actively involved in the wedding preparations and even organized her bachelorette trip to Bali. My family owns a travel agency manager, which made it easier for me to handle the arrangements. Sil was aware of this and asked me to plan the entire trip without any upfront payment from her end. She promised to settle the full amount after the wedding and even considered having me organize her honeymoon. Trusting in her word and our improved relationship, I funded the trip for her and the other bridesmaids entirely out of my own pocket. However, just 5 days ago, Sil abruptly disinvited me from the wedding. The reason? She felt threatened by my pregnancy, worried that it might draw attention away from her on her big day, even though I'm not showing yet. This decision was particularly hurtful considering the efforts and financial commitment I had made for her bachelorette party. Her actions made it clear that her earlier intentions to mend our relationship were superficial, primarily motivated by the benefits my family business could offer her. Now, with the wedding approaching and the bachelorette trip behind us, I find myself excluded from the festivities, my contributions seemingly forgotten. One morning, I woke up feeling terribly ill and ended up vomiting intensely. Concerned about my health, my husband and I promptly went to see a doctor. We were worried I might have picked up a stomach bug during our recent travels. However, the visit brought unexpected news. I was actually 5 weeks pregnant, and what I was experiencing was simply morning sickness, nothing serious at all. Overjoyed by the revelation, we quickly shared the news with our close family members, who were all delighted for us, except for one person, Sophia. When we told her, her reaction seemed forced and insincere. At the time, we didn't dwell on it too much, as we were caught up in our own excitement. However, just days after returning from Sophia's bachelorette party, which I had organized and funded, she sent me a shocking message. She explained that she felt it necessary to uninvite me from her upcoming wedding, hoping I wouldn't be offended. I was stunned and hurt, especially since there was no clear reason for her sudden change in behavior. Attempts to reach her for an explanation were futile. She ignored both my calls and texts, and even my husband couldn't get through to her. After several days of silence, Sophia finally picked up one of my calls. Clearly annoyed, she demanded I stop calling her so frequently. I persisted, needing an explanation for her unexpected hostility. Abruptly, she revealed that she didn't want me at her wedding because my pregnancy might overshadow her as the bride. Shocked by her bluntness and the pettiness of her reasoning, I realized the timing of her decision, right after learning of my pregnancy, was indeed too suspicious to overlook. It saddened me deeply to see her act so insecurely, especially considering our close past interactions and all that I had contributed to her celebration. I felt rather exploited because of the entire ordeal surrounding the trip. After discussing it with my husband, I resolved that I was content to skip the event, and I planned to request that she repay all the money she owed me. My husband, equally distressed by how his sister had treated me, decided to communicate to her that he too would skip the event. Following our discussion, he messaged her explaining his decision to not attend due to her behavior and stressed the need for her to refund the money promptly. She responded within an hour, calling our demands unreasonable and justified her desire for my absence at the wedding on the grounds of my pregnancy, claiming it posed a risk. However, I was baffled by her fear since I wasn't visibly pregnant and no one would know unless I disclosed it myself. We intended to keep the pregnancy a secret, and even her parents, who were aware, would not discuss it. Moreover, we certainly knew better than to announce personal news at someone else's wedding. Thus, if anyone was being unreasonable, it was her. The situation escalated when my husband argued with her over the phone as she tried to persuade him to attend the wedding, ending on a sour note. My husband stood firm in his decision not to attend in support of how I was treated, and he informed his parents, who chose to remain neutral. Things worsened when Sophia disclosed the situation to her friends, leading some of them to withdraw from the wedding. After being removed from the bridesmaids group chat, I received messages from her friends expressing their support for me and criticizing Sophia's actions as foolish and petty. While I appreciated their support, I was also deeply hurt that Sophia discussed my pregnancy with others without consulting me, especially since I had wanted to keep it private. It seemed that even her cousin might now be aware due to her indiscretion in the group chat. When I discovered I was pregnant, my husband and I had intended to share the news at our own pace. Unfortunately, my cousin-in-law, who is also a bridesmaid, decided to share this personal detail without our consent. She sent several voice notes to her friends explaining the situation, and though these friends were not directly connected to our family or social circle, the news inevitably reached her cousin, who is part of the family. This breach of privacy worried us, as it could easily spread throughout the family before we were ready. Despite my efforts to contain the situation by asking her to keep the news private, she had already informed her parents. Thankfully, she agreed to ensure her parents wouldn't discuss it further. While the news of our pregnancy was undoubtedly exciting for the family, especially since my husband is a beloved figure and the eldest of his generation, we felt our privacy had been violated. Our disappointment deepened with Sophia, the cousin-in-law. Her indiscretion seemed needless, and it has strained our relationship. Currently, we're quite upset with her. Her upcoming wedding has added to the tension, as her friends, aware of the situation, have threatened to boycott the event unless she reconciles with me. She has since apologized and re-invited me to the wedding, but I find myself reluctant to attend. Adding to my reluctance is the realization that Sophia's previous kindness might have been motivated by her desire to have me organize her bachelorette trip, rather than genuine friendship. With all these issues weighing on me, attending her wedding feels increasingly uncomfortable. Currently, I find myself in a difficult position concerning my sister-in-law's upcoming wedding. After a series of unfortunate events, I feel unable to participate as a bridesmaid or even attend the ceremony. While I have no objections to my husband going without me or her friends supporting her, personally being there would be too uncomfortable. The issue has escalated because my husband insists on not attending without me, and her friends have expressed a similar sentiment. They are siding with me due to some unforgivable actions by my sister-in-law, despite the significant effort I've put into helping her, including organizing a trip. Now, she is desperate for me to attend, to the extent that even my in-laws have reached out, expressing how miserable she feels and her deep regret. They've asked me to consider forgiving her and attending to keep the peace. While part of me wishes I could let go of what happened, my feelings are too strong, and attending her wedding doesn't feel right. The best I can offer is to try to persuade my husband and her friends to be there in my stead, but this too is proving difficult. My husband has made it clear he will not attend if I'm not welcome, and he's so supportive that I find it hard to argue with him. I've attempted to encourage her friends to fulfill their bridesmaid duties, explaining that the issues between me and her should not impact her wedding. However, they seem reluctant and have avoided the topic, maintaining they are doing what they believe is right. Additionally, there are other underlying issues not directly related to our conflict, contributing to their reluctance. Her friends mentioned that she has changed significantly since getting engaged, adopting a demanding attitude that has strained relationships. They hesitated to discuss this with me initially, not wanting to seem like they were gossiping or exacerbating the situation further. Despite their long-standing friendships with her from high school and college, they find her recent behavior increasingly difficult to handle. With the wedding a week away, I'm at a loss for what to do. Am I wrong for not forgiving my sister-in-law and refusing to attend her wedding, even after her apologies and the clear emotional toll it's taking on everyone involved? I discussed these new revelations with her friends, and while it shed more light on their feelings, it has only added to the complexity of the decision I have to make. Lately, there has been a noticeable shift in her behavior. Over the past few months, she has increasingly shown a sense of entitlement. She frequently lost her temper over trivial matters and expected everyone to cater to her demands without showing any gratitude. I had observed some of these episodes myself during a bachelorette trip. There, she was not only rude to some of her friends, but also to the hotel staff. I didn't give it much thought initially, as she treated me differently, likely because I was footing the bill and she couldn't risk upsetting me. However, looking back, I realized that this behavior was consistent. Her expectations reached a tipping point when she expected her friends to support her uncritically after a personal incident involving me. When they tried to explain that her actions were unjustified and that she owed me an apology, she lashed out at them too. Her refusal to listen was the last straw for many of her friends. They had endured her increasingly unbearable behavior for too long, and this final incident made them decide they no longer wanted to be around her. As a result, after a heated argument stemming from her conduct towards me, they chose not to attend the wedding. In my view, their decision is completely justified. I've tolerated her disrespectful behavior far less than they have, and I can't fault them for wanting to step back from the wedding. At this point, I doubt there's much I can do, other than possibly discussing it with my husband. I came to realize that her unpleasant behavior wasn't only directed at me, but was how she treated everyone. The reason she had been kind to me these past months was purely self-serving. She relied on me to plan and fund her bachelorette party, probably because she wasn't ready to shoulder the expense all at once, especially with the looming wedding costs. She was confident I'd cover her until she could repay me. But once the trip concluded, she saw no reason to maintain the facade, and her demeanor towards me shifted dramatically. Her transformation into a complete bridezilla was evident, and I no longer felt obligated to tolerate her actions. Although my in-laws were visibly disappointed by the unfolding events, they didn't voice any objections, which I appreciated. They were understandably upset, given it was their daughter's wedding, but they respected my decision to not attend. My husband also decided to skip the wedding, further complicating family dynamics. When I informed Sophia that we wouldn't be attending, she lashed out. She accused me of ruining her wedding and labeled me an attention seeker bent on revenge. Her words were harsh and personal, and normally, I would distance myself from such negativity. However, this time I responded, unable to let her baseless accusations stand. I reminded her that the turmoil was a result of her own actions, particularly after she uninvited me simply because I was pregnant. I also pointed out the significant amount of money I was owed for financing the bachelorette trip, a favor I did as family, which she dismissed as me being petty. Her reaction only highlighted her ingratitude and sense of entitlement, making it clear that my financial support during the bachelorette trip was taken for granted. Despite her attempts to trivialize the matter, the financial burden I shouldered was substantial, and I felt compelled to remind her of that. Her behavior was not only ungrateful, but also reflective of how little she valued the support and sacrifices of those around her. I had reached a point where I needed to address the way she had been treating me. It's a well-known saying, "Don't bite the hand that feeds you." So, I made it clear to her that her ingratitude was unacceptable. I even mentioned that I had been hesitant to attend her wedding given her recent behavior towards me and others, which seemed justified now. Initially, I had been persuading my husband to go to the wedding without me, so as not to spoil the event for her or her family, especially since I respect my in-laws who are genuinely kind people. However, I felt relieved when my husband chose not to go, as her actions showed she wasn't being reasonable or kind. During a heated exchange where she began using harsh words, I decided to end the call. I had already expressed everything I needed to and saw no value in continuing a fruitless conversation. Afterwards, I briefed my husband about the entire ordeal. He supported my decision, noting that while he usually prefers to avoid conflict, sometimes you need to stand your ground when someone consistently oversteps. I'm at peace with my words, regardless of her upcoming wedding. Following our talk, it became crystal clear that we would not be attending the wedding. I anticipate this decision might lead to uncomfortable questions for my husband's parents, but I'm comforted by the knowledge that I did everything within my power to manage the situation responsibly. It wasn't my fault things turned out this way. On another note, I recently had an enlightening conversation with Sophia's maid of honor, one of her oldest friends from middle school. She was probably the only person. Someone I had never spoken to before finally reached out to me today, catching me off guard. I never anticipated a call from her, but it seems she had a change of heart and chose to step up and do what's right. She affirmed she wasn't backing out of the wedding. Instead, She phoned to confirm my suspicions about Sophia using me for a trip. She began the call by admitting how tough it was to confront this issue since Sophia is her best friend. However, Sophia's recent actions were too drastic to ignore. Even though Sophia has always been somewhat privileged, her recent behavior was excessive. She reassured me that she would fulfill her role as the maid of honor at the wedding, but she planned to distance herself from Sophia afterward. Before we ended our conversation, she disclosed that she and Sophia had discussed me a few months back. Sophia knew I ran a travel agency manager with my parents and saw an opportunity to use that relationship to her advantage. She aimed to get close to me, hoping I'd organize and possibly fund the bachelorette trip, knowing she could delay repayment since I wasn't a regular travel agent. Realizing I was right about her motives was disheartening, but not surprising. I appreciated her honesty, especially knowing Sophia would never confess to such a scheme. After revealing the truth, she asked me to keep our conversation confidential, which I intend to honor. With the wedding already mired in enough drama, there's no need for me to stir more trouble. I recently spoke with my husband about a phone call concerning our friend Sophia, and it's quite disheartening to see her struggling to maintain friendships, particularly with her oldest friend. Her behavior has been concerning, and it doesn't seem like she's ready to recognize or address it. She appears to believe that being engaged gives her a free pass to mistreat others, without realizing that being under wedding planning stress doesn't excuse such actions. Unfortunately, she might have to face the repercussions of her actions the hard way. 5 days ago, Sophia got married, and neither we nor many of her other friends attended. It came to light that she had removed all of her bridesmaids the night before the wedding, leaving only her best friend and her cousin at the ceremony. The cousin attended more out of family obligation than desire, while her best friend stood by her as the maid of honor. It was no surprise to us, but it underscores a broader issue with her behavior. Many have questioned why we missed the wedding. We explained that I was quite ill with the stomach flu, and my husband needed to care for me. This explanation aligned with what our in-laws suggested. Now that Sophia and I have settled our financial dealings, it feels like a natural point to move on from this chapter. It seems mutual that neither of us will pursue a relationship moving forward. Instead, I'm choosing to focus on the joyous aspects of life, like my upcoming role as a mother. My husband and I are excited about our future, and I am dedicating my energy to embracing the positives as we prepare for our new addition to the family.